All right, everybody. Welcome. I'm Bobby. This is Todd.
Hello.
We are Rally Tal Sports. We are going to do a couple of things. This is our first stream, so take it easy on us. All right, everybody. I forgot that I had it up on my phone. All right, everybody. Welcome. First stream shenanigans. So we started this podcast. This has been something we've been talking about for God knows how long.
7 years.
7 years. We are both really passionate about the game of baseball. It's primarily what we focus on here. It's really cool to see something that we've talked about for forever to finally come to fruition. So we're just going to kind of give you our backgrounds, where we're from, how we got into it, and we'll kind of go from there. So we met in grade school. We're both from the same city. We currently reside in Columbus, Ohio. We're originally from Cincinnati, so we're both Reds fans. You can see that we're not wearing Reds hats. It's just because we love hats. We're kind of hat nerds.
I think we should make that a thing for every stream. We just pick a different hat and we'll talk about it.
I have a few to pick from.
Yeah,
I know you do. I know you
do
too. But yeah. So I can't remember if I think we met playing Little League. Your dad was an umpire. Good old Nick Gottschall.
Big Nick.
Big Nick
making it happen.
Big Nick. We'll talk about that later. I was a catcher growing up. Really enjoyed the position. I just enjoyed seeing the field, knowing everything that was going on. It just helps you watch the game from a different perspective. This gentleman was a pitcher, a very good one, until he started having some elbow issues. But long and short of it is, we both really enjoy baseball. We played multiple sports together growing up. We've known each other for over 20 years, and this is cooler than anything else that I've done in my life. I think, actually doing something that we talked about forever. I didn't even ever think it was going to happen, but we finally got it done. So
it's kismet. End up in the same city.
Absolutely.
As grown adults.
Yeah, we both got relocated twice in our lives to the same city for work. He originally got moved up to Dayton when he was with Kroger. I shortly followed him in my career with Enterprise. So we lived in Dayton for 2 years.
As neighbors,
which we are also neighbors now. We'll get to that in a second. And then we went separate ways for a little bit. I moved down to Kentucky. He was in Mason and Middletown. Always obviously kept in touch. And then we both had opportunities that presented our way for us to be in Columbus, but same thing. He moved up here like 3 months before I did. And then I got a place up here, and this is where we sit.
Across the street.
I can see his house from my window. It's great. But yeah, so I'll let Todd kind of give you a little bit of his background since I won't shut up, but
yeah. So I think as long as I can remember, I either had a bat, a ball, or a glove in my hand. Some of the earliest home videos of me as an infant was just hitting a basketball with a wiffle ball bat.
For sure.
I can remember watching my older brother playing baseball and also having to play some game of baseball with either my mom or my grandparents.
For sure.
But it's kind of in my blood, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's my dad played baseball, my brother played baseball, my uncles played baseball. I just was fortunate enough that by the time I started playing baseball, travel baseball was around.
Right.
So I got the opportunity to play against all sorts of different, D1 to D3 talent across many states, and had the chance to play with some guys that also played collegiate baseball, and just always loved the game for more than playing it. Just wanted to
sure
learn more about not just being a better athlete, but being like a smarter athlete too.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely.
So I wasn't always the most talented, but I feel like I always had a little bit of a competitive edge, being able to understand the game at a little bit of a different level than everybody else. So
yeah, absolutely.
Even as an adult, I think everybody watches baseball at some point in time in their life, and they either have it on, in the background, or they're at a family outing and you're watching the Reds or whoever your favorite team is, and you understand what's going on in the game. But I think for you and I, it's just different. We watch it at a completely different pace than anybody else does, and we break down the intricacies of the game a little bit different than everyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I can watch a game where there's 10 home runs, and can also watch a game where there's nothing going on except great pitching. It's a beautiful game. Sometimes it's offense, sometimes it's defense, but at the end of the day, it's awesome to watch. Neil, Liz, Los, thanks for liking the video, guys. Appreciate it. So one of the first topics that we want to get into, been the talk of baseball this season, Shohei Ohtani. This guy came over from Japan a few years ago. He's battled some injuries, but he is off to one of the hottest starts in baseball that you could possibly imagine. And the crazy thing about him is he does everything. He can get on the mound and give you innings. He can step up to the plate and hit some home runs. So, Todd, kind of walk me through what you think has made Shohei successful this season.
So, other than being able to hit, 450-foot home runs,
crazy.
I think the biggest thing for him that he's learned that he didn't really have in years past was a little bit more plate discipline. Now, he still has close to 60 strikeouts. He's in the top 10 in strikeouts, but when his first couple years of playing in the United States in Major League Baseball, he struck out pretty much every third at bat.
Sure.
He was a either all contact double home run or just whiffed. So
right.
I think the big thing for him is that he has learned how to take pitches that are not his pitches. He is predominantly a fastball hitter. He is not a guy that sees the breaking ball well, especially from a left-handed pitcher. But if he's able to get a fastball on like the lower outer half, he has the athletic ability to just pull it 400 plus feet to right field and the right center field. I mean, it's unreal to watch this guy, step up to the plate with less than 10 years of professional baseball experience and hit better than 95% of, Major League Baseball players. And, to be able to be not just a successful hitter, but also be able to go out and throw 100 miles an hour when they ask him to pitch is, it's just a completely different side of baseball that really we just haven't seen that, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
There's not a lot of guys out there that have the athleticism to be able to pitch 6 innings and throw 90 pitches in a game and then go play right field like he did in his last outing. I mean,
right.
It's just
it's
insane. I mean, that's you do that in Little League Baseball, right? You start, you pitch 4 innings, and then you go play shortstop, even when your arm's hurt, whatever. But we're talking about a guy that gets paid millions of dollars, that plays with the best baseball players in the world, because that's where they come to play Major League Baseball.
Right.
And he's still able to go out and play right field. It's insane.
Yeah, I mean, you have to really put it into perspective what this guy's doing. The best comparison that they've been able to come up this year in the majors that I've seen, it's a crazy comparison, but Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth is the last human being before Shohei Ohtani that has been able to get this type of production, not only from the mound, but from the plate. And to have almost over 100 years of baseball pass, and this guy comes from a completely different country where baseball is huge. He's coming into America and changing the game. As we see it. We saw Babe Ruth 100 years ago. None of us ever watched him play live.
No.
So Shohei Ohtani, he's a once in a lifetime player to go watch. he's not anything to take for granted. Now, with that being said, he has had great production. One thing that you and I talked about the other day, there's been some injuries in that lineup to Rendon and Trout. They're going to be out. So as far as production and types of pitches that he's going to see, well, before we get into that question, for anybody who's watching, please comment and chat. We want to know where you're at, who your team is. If you have any questions about your team, we're more than happy to dive into it. Just wanted to throw that out there. But back to the injuries that the Angels are facing right now. What do you expect from Shohei in the coming weeks in regard to what he's going to be able to do, what type of pitches he's going to see?
Yeah, so I think the big thing for him is you kind of take out some of the fluff that he has, right? So Rendon hasn't really played all year. He's been hurt most of the season. Mike Trout's out for another 6 to 7 weeks. So really the only other consistent production that's been in the lineup is Jared Walsh. Jared Walsh is also a very young, up-and-coming power hitter. Not great in the field, but he's hitting well over 300. He's got 10-plus home runs, over 30 RBI. So a really nice piece to the lineup, but he's also left-handed, right? So when you look at the way you build a lineup for, say they're playing, I don't know, the A's and Sean Manaea is throwing, so you have a lefty on the mound. Can you bat Jared Walsh and Shohei Ohtani 2-3 or 3-4, however you want to bat them? Not really. You got to break up the lineup, right? Because Manaea can go back to back on those guys, and Shohei Ohtani is notorious for striking out on pitches inside the zone that break through the zone, like a cutter or slider, curveball, whatever. So, I think you will see, and you've seen a little bit, his numbers are going to go down, right? He before Trout got hurt, he was hitting in the 290s, and he's already down to 268, 270, somewhere in that ballpark, which is that's nothing to slouch on, but
they dropped 30 points in a week.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
So
that's substantial.
You're going to see, again, his strikeout ratio has gotten better, but you're going to see more strikeouts. You're going to see pitchers not throwing to contact like they would before with him. When you have so much fluff around the lineup, you can throw to contact to get a lead runner out, whatever it may be. But when Ohtani comes up, there's very likely maybe Fletcher gets on. Maybe if he's batting second, there's one guy ahead of him. So you pitch to get him out. You pitch to swing and miss. It's not a pitch to contact. So you're going to see a lot more guys attack him with slow stuff, your fast, your cutters, sliders, stuff like that. And I think that you'll see his batting average start to really drop probably into like the 230s, 240s. With that being said, he could surprise everybody and figure out, at least how to have a little bit more discipline, but that's not something you teach overnight. I mean, you look at a guy like Vladimir Guerrero, right? So Vladimir Guerrero was kind of pre the strikeout baseball, but people loved it because the dude could hit a ball that bounced in the dirt. But his swing ratio was like in the 85%. So that's 8 of 10 pitches that he's swinging at.
Right.
Tony Gwynn, for reference, was like in the 20s, which is insane. This is a different topic, but
that's why Tony Gwynn never struck out.
Yeah. But yeah, you're gonna with the way baseball is now, with it being okay to strike out 200 times in a season, you're going to see Ohtani get into some super high numbers. And, the question kind of comes up too is he going to be able to keep pitching, right? Because you have to have his bat in the lineup. But the way that they've been doing it is he pitches, he rests. Maybe it's one game, maybe it's 2 games, and then he comes back and hits twice, and then he's on the mound again. So you really have to start thinking about what is going to be the next step for him, right?
Yeah, I mean, with all that usage that he's getting, as we had talked about, his body is going to start taking a toll. We know that he's had arm surgery, he's had knee surgery, so he had something with the patella back in 2019. Then he also had Tommy John. Was that last year?
That was 2018.
2018. So, yeah, Tommy John in 2018. He had patellar, something wrong with the ligament in his knee in 2019. So he's young, but he's had some injuries that scare you long term. With overusage of his abilities. So it just kind of begs the question, how long can he keep this up? How long is he going to be efficient? How long is he going to be effective? Like he says, is he going to be able to come in and throw 95 pitches and then, head out to right field and track down fly balls?
Right. So the benefit to him being on the Angels is that he can be the DH, right? He doesn't have to go out and play the field.
Right.
So maybe sometimes he rests, but maybe sometimes you just throw him right back in the DH. But being a pitcher in professional baseball, and a lot of people don't realize this, is it's one of the most athletic positions on the field.
Agreed.
You take a guy like Roy Halladay, for example. Roy Halladay on start days got up at 4 o'clock in the morning and worked out for 2.5 hours. Then he'd throw a bullpen. Then he'd stretch. Then he'd long toss. And then he would get ready for the game. So you're talking about, before he even hits the mound, he's probably over 150 total pitches thrown.
Sure.
And then he would go out and throw 110 pitches.
Right.
Right?
He's clocking almost 400 pitches.
Yeah. I mean, when he no-hit the Reds, he said that he threw 375 pitches that day. Somewhere in that ballpark.
It's bonkers.
And in the ninth inning, he was still throwing in the mid-90s. Right? So that's a completely different kind of athlete.
Absolutely.
So is Ohtani that kind of athlete? Maybe. But I think something that might benefit him in the long run is he's kind of gotten some of the nagging injuries out of the way, right?
Right.
You get Tommy John. In theory, your elbow is fixed, right? Because you're using a different ligament from your leg to throw.
It just seems like that's the way of pitching. If you haven't had Tommy John, you can't be a professional pitcher.
Yeah, look at Strasburg. Strasburg was the number 1 pick in the draft when we graduated high school, and it took him 2 years to
get back to where
he's consistent, right, with the Nationals and throw the way he throws now. But I think the big thing for Ohtani is that he's going to have to really, in the next couple of years, figure out with the organization, is he a pitcher or is he a DH?
Right.
Because he's fine in the outfield, but he's not a everyday outfielder. Clearly he has a great arm. He has a decent glove. But in the American League, you don't have to sacrifice position to have the stick in the lineup. You can have the DH in basically 130 games out of the year.
Right. So
in theory, if you take that, he could technically pitch in 30 games and hit in the rest. Right? And if you want to break it down that way. But I don't think that is a long-term fix for him, really. I think it's more it's going to have to be a decision made, I would say, in the next 2 years. He's super young. I think he's 25 or 26. And if anybody's seen a picture of him, the dude is stacked. I mean, shoulders for days. Yeah. So he was not that way when he came from Japan 5 years ago. I mean,
he's in the gym.
Yeah, and he said he's acclimated to American baseball that you have to put the time in the weight room, right?
100%.
Look at guys in baseball now, and they're built like football players. Like, if you look at Tyler O'Neill from the Cardinals, that dude is a freight train for no reason. Like, you don't have to be 5'8", 220 to be a left fielder in professional baseball, but he decided to be that way.
Yeah, I mean, you got Lorenzen, you got Trout, the list goes on.
Yeah,
these guys are huge.
When we were watching baseball growing up, this is a name drop here, but you think about like Dan Uggla, right? Oh, Dan Uggla, when he was on the Marlins or the Braves, he's a freak. But those guys that's baseball now. Guys are built that way.
That's everybody.
Right? We're going to talk about Yerman Mercedes here in a little bit, but he's 5'11", 245. Yeah. And he looks like
stout.
He could play inside linebacker for the Bengals tomorrow.
He could. 100%.
So it's crazy.
Absolutely.
Baseball's crazy. That's why I love it.
Chris, thanks for the follow, brother. Appreciate it. Also liking the video. Nick, Mr. Gottschall, thanks for showing up and showing some love, baby. Will had a question. Are the days of pitchers throwing complete games coming to an end?
Ooh. I think we could really have a whole episode about this, but I think
we'll dive into it real quick here for you, Will.
Yes, I really do believe that. Pitchers are
with 6 no-hitters already on the season. Complete games are coming to an end.
Yes.
Okay.
So
here's
why. As we've talked about baseball players becoming athletes, the longevity of your body making it through a 162 game season comes into consideration, right? Now we've seen 6 no-hitters already. Some of them from like Spencer Turnbull from the Tigers throwing a no-hitter is like me going out to a Little League game and throwing a no-hitter or something. Like it just never like you would never think it would happen, right?
Although I'm pretty confident that you would accomplish that feat.
I don't know. My arm would probably only last like 2 innings. I'd probably hit a kid and I'd get thrown out. It'd be a whole thing. But well, man, I think I do. I think that athletes are overconditioned in baseball now. I think we ask, just like we're talking about Tyler O'Neill being this big guy, like that doesn't happen during the season. I mean, you're working all year round.
Baseball is a 365 sport.
Absolutely. And look at Michael Lorenzen, relief pitcher for the Reds. He's out for another 60 to 90 days. His injury is based on his weightlifting regimen. Baseball players are implementing things like CrossFit and Olympic lifts and stuff like that into their workout routine, and it's just not sustainable. When David Wells threw a perfect game, he was still wasted for being at a Saturday Night Live after party. He admitted that. He was up until 5 o'clock in the morning. He had to be at the field at 9 a.m. He threw his bullpen 5 minutes before the game started, and then he threw a perfect game. You can't do that anymore.
No.
The discipline it takes to be
the David Wells and the Bartolo Colognes of the world are.
Yeah, I mean, look at CC Sabathia. He came in as a big dude, and by the time he retired, he was lean.
Yeah,
that is the expectation for these guys, and that comes during the off season and putting in the work to be that way, right? And I lift like 4 days a week, and I have to take weeks off because my body just can't handle it. I'm only 30. There's guys still pitching in baseball that are in their mid-30s. There's no way they can sustain that for forever. So, baseball is rapidly changing. You're seeing teams, and we'll talk about this some too, but guys going to openers instead of, actual starting pitchers. That's just the way baseball is. Baseball is science now. It's not talent. It's not as much talent as it used to be, I should say.
I think from an overconditioning perspective, I think that's across all sports.
Absolutely.
I think it's you got to think, these kids that are professional athletes, they're coming into the league anywhere between, with the exception of baseball, and a very select few that play baseball make it very early, like 2018 in that range. You just have to be a Ken Griffey Jr. type talent to get into the league that early.
Which is also an anomaly.
Which is also, yeah. But I mean, you got to think, football. You got kids that have been training since they were 10. Basketball, baseball, football. Those are the 3 sports that even soccer, I guess. They
absolutely.
That's
a year-round sport.
Year-round. I mean, they're just constantly running. But in order to compete at the highest level, you have to do that.
I mean, Bryson DeChambeau wasn't built on the course. That dude was built in the weight room.
That's 100%.
Yeah.
If you guys watch golf or know anything about golf, go look at Bryson DeChambeau.
He's no John Daly. John Daly was ripping darts, cranking 300-foot, straight down the fairway.
Just monster shots.
And going and slamming a case of Miller Lights afterwards. That just doesn't happen anymore.
No. DeChambeau. I mean, I think the whole, and just to touch on golf for a brief minute, I think the whole workout regimen started with Tiger Woods. He was the first golfer that really got into the weight room
for sure,
and to really impact his game. And then you see his body completely fell apart.
Yeah, his back. He lost his back.
At knees,
30,
everything.
34 or something like that.
Yeah, late 30s.
Yeah.
But just across the board, I think the longevity of athletes is going to be a much more finite number. as compared to the old days. Like guys like Nolan Ryan will never exist again.
No.
Guys throwing, 22, 23 seasons, keeping velocity, above 95 and just being an overall badass while you did it. But, yeah, longevity of athletes is not going to be... So, I don't know if, we're still going to continue to see no-hitters. I know we'll see perfect games. Moving forward, I think this 6 no-hitters this year is a 1,000,000% anomaly. You have to have all the stars aligned for that to happen.
Yeah. Well, if you continue to stick around, we're going to have a whole episode here soon that's going to be completely dedicated to talking about these no-hitters that happened this year and kind of the science that goes behind how ridiculous that is that's happened less than 50 games in. So we will definitely talk about that more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, I just had a great idea for another episode. We should just do a whole episode and talk about Nolan Ryan.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, I could talk about him for
I know.
30
I don't
hours,
even need to be present. I don't even need to be present for that episode.
You just give me a 12 ski of Bud Lights and just let it happen.
Absolutely. Josh, thanks for liking the video. Carl, thanks for liking the video. Next topic we had in line for this evening was Yerman Mercedes and him violating an unwritten rule in baseball. That unwritten rule being you're supposed to take on a 3-0 count when you're up 11 runs. If you saw the video, that is not what happened. They had a position player on the mound just throwing batting practice. And, like, dude, you could just see his eyes light up as soon as that ball left. And it got to the plate, and he just absolutely puts everything that he has into this pitch and blasts it over the left center wall. The entire time, the coach, Tony La Russa, who has not been, a coach in professional baseball for the last 10 years. He was previously with the Cardinals. We all hated Tony La Russa as Reds fans because he's a great coach, and Cardinals always beat the Reds.
Mm-hmm. He was the one that also...
Annually.
He was also the one that said to sign Yadier Molina. So just don't ever forget that.
Yeah, well, Yadier Molina, as much as we hate him, is the best catcher that's ever played baseball. We could even have an argument about that if anybody disagrees.
We can talk about that.
Where was I going? Oh, yeah. So Tony La Russa made a big hubbub, as did the rest of the baseball world, in regards to his decision to swing on this pitch. Now, the unwritten rule is 3-0, you're up 11, you take. You do not swing. It is respect for the other team. You're not supposed to, run up the score. You're supposed to have respect for the other team. That's the big thing, is the respect factor. There's a big, the unwritten rules of baseball, all of them come down to respecting the opponent. And the newer age of baseball that's rolling through, it's not, for them, it has nothing to do with the lack of respect. It has everything to do with the intensity in which you attack the game. And that intensity shouldn't change whether you are up 11, 3-0 count, and you blast a home run off of a position player, or if it's, 5-5, bottom of the ninth, you should attack every play with the same intensity. That's what the new age of baseball, the new mentality is. And there's, with baseball, there's still a lot of the old right, in charge, managing, in the front offices, with
front office of Major League Baseball.
In the front, yeah, so
including the commissioner of Major League Baseball.
Commissioner, yeah. So, there's a lot of change happening. And this scenario brings up a great point for us to kind of talk about it. We'll have an episode later about all the unwritten rules of baseball and how we feel about it. But in your opinion, you used to pitch. What is your thought on what Yerman did?
So there's two things to that, right? So as a pitcher, if I'm an actual pitcher, right? So Astudillo is a catcher and a third baseman. If I'm being asked to go into a game and I'm down 10, you've already called it an L at that point, right? So
essentially,
expect the worst. So there's two parts to that, though. As a pitcher, if somebody hits a homer off of me 3-0, the next dude's getting clocked. Also an unwritten rule of baseball.
Correct. We'll get into what happened after that.
So, look, we're not even talking about the fact that he hit a home run on a 47-mile-an-hour pitch. The exit velocity on that home run
he smoked that
was
ball.
over 100 miles an hour. He doubled the speed of the pitch with a wooden maple baseball bat.
And with the new dead baseballs that are being used in today's game this year, have made it incredibly tough for hitters to hit the long ball, especially on a pitch that has no velocity whatsoever.
Right. So, am I mad as a pitcher? Absolutely. You just got crushed. But I've already lost. So why get upset about a great young up and coming talent who represents another culture of baseball that's integrated recently with the Cuban culture?
Right.
Why get upset about that? And for La Russa to kind of express himself the way he did,
throw a tantrum.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, it's a grown man temper tantrum, right? You can't do that, right? Like the whole thing with pitchers throwing in games, the Reds have done it. I personally don't like it. I think that you are, while in theory you're saving arms, you're admitting defeat whether you're down 6 or down 16. And the beautiful thing about baseball is that literally anything can happen, and you can have one big inning, and it could completely change the direction of the game. Baseball is 100% a momentum game.
Sure.
And when you bring a position player into pitch, it is you're giving up hope.
Right.
So if you are upset about Yerman Mercedes hitting a home run on a 3-0 pitch, you are the reason why baseball is not popular with the new generation of young athletes.
Absolutely. I mean, you got to think, this kid starting the season, best hitter in baseball at one point. You know, it was him and Trout going at it. You know, he's still batting .345. He's batting .345, folks. And for him to, like, Frank Thomas made a comment on it, lifelong White Sox, player. Came in and said, I have no issues with what he did. If you're a hitter, you got a hot bat, you see a pitch like that,
you swing it.
You absolutely crush that ball.
Yeah, swing it.
Trevor Bauer, very outspoken, no issues with it because Trevor Bauer's the man. And we wish he never left Cincinnati, but we're always going to be hurt about that.
I took that way more personal than I should have as a 30-year-old man. Mary had to calm me down. Remember? Because I called you after I told her when he signed with the Dodgers.
Oh, for sure.
And I knew he wasn't coming back to Cincinnati.
He's never coming back.
It hurt. It hurt so bad because he gave his life. He created hype in Cincinnati for baseball again, right?
Yeah.
Given the Reds had a good year and a shortened season, that dude was a Cy Young winner, and it really wasn't super close.
No.
He had one of the best short seasons I think you could ask for from a starting pitcher. So
absolutely,
to have that go away so quickly, it's just like a little tease.
Yeah.
Because I would love to see Trevor Bauer pitch 33 games in a Reds uniform. And I would love to see him in person in a Reds uniform, and I never got that opportunity.
Yeah, we'll never see it.
And I am super butthurt over it.
Yeah, we'll never see it.
No.
Papa Bear, thanks for stopping by. Said he's throwing a tantrum over the lack of fundamentals in baseball right now. Thoughts?
Yeah, I look, you could say that for any professional sport now, right?
100%.
The fundamentals of baseball now are different than the fundamentals of baseball. Sorry, Charlie. 30 years ago, it's a different sport.
Yeah, that's kind of where the new generation of athletes and the old guard have very different viewpoints on the game of baseball and what it's about. Not saying that the fundamentals aren't important, because they 100% are, but the fundamentals of baseball are they're off the field.
Absolutely. It's conditioning now.
It's conditioning. It's how you carry yourself.
Baseball is 100% science now.
Yeah.
Before, fundamentals were necessary to be a great Major League Baseball player. Fundamentals are a requirement to be a great Major League Baseball player now. It's a part. It's a part of the job, right? It's not.
Yeah, not just the traditional fundamentals. Catching a fly ball, and covering it with two hands, making sure that you get in front of a ball. When you scoop a ball, you're not doing this Olay thing. Outside, we're not talking about those fundamentals because those are obviously very important and they are required to be a Major League Baseball player. We're talking about the fundamentals of getting to the gym every day, eating right, taking care of your body, ice baths, all of these crazy things like these. What are those cryo chambers that they're doing now?
Yeah.
There's so much more science that is involved, and I think that kind of gets into, a different type of fundamentals it requires to even be a professional athlete across the board.
Sure. Well, that also kind of goes in line with how do you keep the longevity of your career alive as a baseball player, primarily as a pitcher, because the average lifespan of a Major League Baseball player, a everyday starter, is anywhere from 5 to 8 years. You have 3 years of a rookie contract, 2 years of a rookie contract, whatever it may be, to kind of get your name into the game, and then you pray that you get an 8 to 10 year deal, and you make it at least 75% of the way through. That is not built on the field anymore as much as it used to. That is built when the game is over and they're not going to the bar to grab beers afterwards. They're going to the tape room and watching every at-bat. Before a game, they're not
with ice packs on their shoulders and trainers massaging their legs.
They're not taking ground balls like they used to, right? They're studying who they're playing against. If you watch a pitcher, they take their hat off and they literally have a card. And that card doesn't just say, hey, throw strikes. It says, this guy on a 1-1 count is going to expect a fastball this percentage of a time. Throw him this pitch. For a 13, 14 hitters, you have to know that. You're expected to know that now. That's not a thing of if you can or can't. You're expected to know that. And if you can't fit into that, your professional at the major league level is that your longevity is very, very short. So that is the fundamental now. That's the fundamental of baseball as science. Again, a whole nother topic. We could spend 3 hours talking about it.
Yeah. Analytics in baseball is the new way to play baseball.
Yeah. No, you have to be,
everything is calculated.
Yeah, you have to be smart to play baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
You can't be Jamarcus Russell and watching blitz packages on a blank tape. Can't do that.
Bingo. Papa Bear said David Bell is a perfect example of how analytics work.
They do work sometimes for him, though.
Yeah.
Look, and you could say the same thing about Joe Madden, right? Joe Madden coached Tampa Bay, and he had nobody. When they made... Let me make sure I'm saying this right. When they made the World Series in the mid-2000s, I'm pretty sure their best player was Carl Crawford, who is no slouch.
Right.
They had him and Evan Longoria. Joe Madden used science to get a team of players through the playoffs to the World Series. Yep. That is analytics. That is science, right? That is how the game is played.
Absolutely.
Where David Bell makes mistakes, again, Charlie, don't make me go on a tangent, but where David Bell makes mistakes is the lack of consistency in the lineup. That is not analytics being used properly.
It's also poor decision making.
Right.
Which is one of his best attributes.
So I think David Bell uses analytics, but he is overly critical of the implementation of the analytics. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. He just overthinks everything.
Yeah. So my dad says the same thing. It's it's ridiculous. They put out a different lineup every other game. They absolutely do. And
you can't get in a groove as a player if you're not hitting
No.
in the same spot.
And you know what Jesse Winker did? He told David Bell that he wasn't going to sit. And guess what? He's hitting 355. Castellanos told David Bell that he wanted to play 162 games. He's hitting 356. Now, those are extreme examples, but he's at least trying to listen to the players. Now, the people that he's taking out and rotating around, those aren't really firm everyday guys either, though. Like, the Reds don't really have, other than those two guys and Suarez right now, excluding Votto being injured, they don't have everyday lineup guys right now.
No.
They're literally trial and erroring 5 or 6 players for one outfield spot and then the middle infield. Because Moose is hurt and Votto's hurt.
Yep.
So, once all those guys are back and healthy, then you get the consistent lineup again, even against left-handed pitching. But right now, you just can't do that. So that's why the Reds are having such a hard time putting together a successful series, because they just everybody's hurt. They're, 2 of your best hitters are hurt, and then your other best hitter, the baseball looks like a racquetball to him right now. You just can't see it. So
yeah,
it sucks.
absolutely. Another question from Papa Bear: are baseball pitchers allowed to have communication devices in their hats? No. But I mean, here's the thing. You're allowed to have them in football, right? I guess that's a good question. We know it's not allowed, but what would there be an advantage to having that type of a device, in your hat, or like having an earpiece?
The Astros won the World Series banging on a trash can, dude. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. You just.
I don't think you can really. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here. Football is different. You have to wear a helmet. It's extremely loud. Pitchers and catchers. Baseball is such an old school sport, right? Everything's done off of hand signals and signs. I think it would be interesting to see pitch. Maybe the catcher, because he's actually wearing a helmet. If he gets that communication from the dugout, because a lot of the time somebody in the dugout's calling the pitches, unless it's a very experienced catcher. I don't know. That's an interesting thought to tackle, but I don't see. I would never imagine in a world where it would happen in baseball, because baseball is way too old school, and I think with the allegations that we've had over the last couple of years, in regards to teams having an advantage to win World Series, I don't think that ever becomes a thing.
No. Well, you can't have point guards don't wear earpieces, right?
Yeah,
a golfer.
We're talking apples and oranges here, right? I think, because, football is loud. They're calling, there's really not an advantage there, I wouldn't think. Unless, there is an advantage in football, because the person that's calling the plays is usually up in the box, aerial view of the field. But, most of the reads are made on the field.
Yeah.
So, there's 2 completely different sports and 2 completely different things, but it will never happen in baseball.
No, not a shot. There's too much purity in baseball to interject. They've already tried to shorten the game. I can't imagine them trying to interject, technology into the game.
No.
Like,
if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think, as far as, just the way that they communicate right now, I don't think that ever needs to change in baseball, because that's one of the things that makes baseball great. Suarez should never have been as short.
110% agree.
That's not a question. He's also hitting the worst that he's ever hit in his career, I think.
Well, they tried to. The theory worked because you were able to get Votto, India, Suarez, Moose, and Castellanos all in the lineup, right? You were able to get 1 through 4 and number 8 tackled. Suarez was traded to the Reds as a shortstop. That was his natural position. He's not great at it. He doesn't have a ton of range. He's got a super strong arm. You just have no idea where he's throwing it.
He's only in the lineup for his bat.
Yeah, he is specifically in the Reds lineup 155, 160 games a year, because at any point in time he can hit a 420-foot moonshot when nobody's on base, because he doesn't ever seem to hit home runs when it matters. But Yeah, I agree with you, Charlie. I think that we are. We are at a point with the Reds where, again, this is a whole different episode too, where
Got a great question for you. Go ahead and finish your thought.
where you're basically biding time until contracts run out and you can kind of start fresh. That's where we're at. Votto's contract's almost over. Moose has got 2 more years. Winker will very likely not be on the Reds after this season, or maybe even by the trade deadline, because he's the hottest hitter in baseball.
Playing too well.
And you can get a lot for he's a DH. Realistically, he's not great in the field.
You don't need him, especially in the AL.
No, you could. Any American League team, most American League teams would take him in a heartbeat. A team like the Yankees, with how often Judge and Stanton get hurt, would kill to have somebody like a Winker in the lineup, or even the Red Sox. Like, you could almost stick him at first base, where Bobby Dahlbeck, one of their top prospects, is really struggling, and maybe he learned something from Winker, because Winker, he has good plate discipline too for being a younger hitter. He strikes out a bit because he swings literally as hard as he can, but you can learn a lot from watching him hit. He has a great eye for finding the pitch that he wants to hit. For young kids that watch baseball, him and Joey Votto are 2 of the best examples of left-handed hitters that you can watch and learn when and how to swing based on kind of scenario.
Right. I mean, as terrible of a season as Votto's having right now, especially at the plate, from a career perspective, the guy situationally knows what's coming and knows how to handle it. Whether he, makes contact or not is a completely different question. But, if you ask him situationally what's going on and what he's going to get, I would probably bet that 80 to 90% of the time he's spot on with what's coming. He may not know, exactly where it's coming, but that's just because, he can guess a, 0-2 pitch high fastball.
Right.
And it might be outside or inside, but he knows he's getting it up in the zone somewhere. The question we got from Will, and Charlie dovetailed on it: how can small and medium market teams compete down the stretch, going into the playoffs? Personally, I think that comes back to what Todd spoke about earlier with Joe Madden, and how he's able to get a lot out of players that most people wouldn't be able to get a lot out of.
Yeah, look, most baseball fans, almost every baseball fan has seen Moneyball, right? Moneyball is used for every team that is not in New York, Boston, Chicago, LA, and Texas, right? So half of the organizations in professional baseball are small to medium market teams. Those teams win games by, it's 3 things. It's your front office. When I say that, I mean, who are you drafting? Who are you developing? And when you do have a young prospect that is going to be worth a lot of money, when are you dealing them or developing them to get smaller value talent? That is what Tampa Bay does exceptionally well. Every decade, basically once a decade, they have all the stars align. They get 3 or 4 guys that are in their farm system that make it at the same time. You make a trade to deal a guy like Chris Archer to the Pirates, and you get Tyler Glasnow and Austin Meadows, 2 guys that really have changed Tampa Bay. And that's all done in the front office. That's not a manager making those decisions. That's your general manager. That's your guy that looks at talent development. That's your guy that looks at the farm system stuff and says, all right, here's what we have. Here's what we need. What do we do long term? Right? Because a small market team never looks in the short term unless you are at the All-Star break and you're on the cusp. Then you try to get one hitter or maybe one starting pitcher that you can keep because their contract's up at the end of the year and you don't really have to pay them a lot of money. The second way is you have to have a smart a cerebral manager that platoons these smaller guys correctly. The Twins are another great example.
Yep.
Rocco Baldelli did an exceptional job. They signed one name in the last 2 years that's really big, and that's Josh Donaldson. He was hurt for most of the season, and they still made it in the playoffs. Because they have guys that they've either signed as free agents who are a little bit older, or they've dealt some dudes in trades that they, you get like a Byron Buxton who is kind of a godsend for them because he's vocal, he's young, he's athletic, he plays center field. Like, that's kind of your guy, your franchise guy. And you figure out how to build around, situational players. And that's kind of what the Reds have to do most of the time, right? Is they have to find guys situationally to fill out the lineup. A real legitimate small market team like Oakland or Minnesota, or not really Minnesota as much, but or like Oakland or Tampa, they have to have guys that they can pay less than $400,000 a year, basically. And that has to be 70% of your lineup. And then you get one guy that you pay a lot of money. And then the last part is that you just pray that there's somebody like a Randy Arozarena that just pops up when the time's right and just goes bananas. Because that's usually what happens with these small market teams. Like, they have either a pitcher that's great. Like when Oakland was the Moneyball season, they had Mulder, Zito, and Hudson that they all developed in their farm system. All three of them were gone immediately after.
Yep.
Right? So you do what you can with the talent that you have, and you hope that you can get 5 guys that you've developed, that you've drafted or either signed through, a Central American, Latin American program. And you hope that most of those guys get ready around the same time, and then they all figure out how to hit, or they all figure out how to throw the ball well. And then you have your 1 year where you make the playoffs, or you're like the Marlins and you win the World Series twice. And then you're, that's it. Then you're done.
All right. 2 more comments came in. The Reds have a ton of young talent. Many other teams have the same bank, but are not bringing them up. Why not? Real life jobs are based on using the talent to grow. Why is Hunter Green not in Cincinnati?
Do you want me to answer that? Because I have a couple of opinions on Hunter Green.
Let's see. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll get to your question in a minute because I think that will be a nice segue off of what he's getting ready to talk about. So yeah, go for it.
So the Reds have 2 of the top pitching prospects in baseball: Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo. Nick Lodolo will make a Reds debut before Hunter Green, and he got drafted 3 years after Hunter Green.
Why do you think that is?
The reason being is that Hunter Green still has not developed the mental maturity to be a major league pitcher. He throws great. He still is not great at throwing strikes, though. He throws 100 miles an hour. We already saw that with Chapman. That's great. It's fun for baseball to bring a guy up like that. But another guy that the Reds did that with that didn't pan out for a long time and people still badmouth is Homer Bailey. Remember how bad Homer Bailey was when they brought him up? You draft him in the first round out of high school. He is the future of the Reds, right? Because at that point in time, the only good starting pitcher they had was Aaron Harang, and that was in the tail end of his career too.
Right.
And the Reds just kept saying like, oh, Bailey's the guy. He's going to be great. They bring him up a year, 2. I think he was 21 when they brought him up. Maybe 3 years into him being in the farm system, and the dude could not throw anything but a 4-seam fastball for a strike, and that's a straight 98-mile-an-hour fastball. In minor league baseball, you can still strike guys out with that pitch. Major league baseball players,
they're up here for a reason.
They will hit that into the Ohio River often, very often. And if it's not going in the Ohio River, it is hit so hard that nobody sees it get through the infield. That's where Hunter Green is at still. He still hasn't developed the out pitch. Every good pitcher has an out pitch or 2. Jacob deGrom has a cutter and a sinker. Jacob deGrom throws a 99 to 100-mile-an-hour fastball and a 95-mile-an-hour sinker, and you have no idea which pitch is coming. That's why he's great. Hunter Green doesn't have that out pitch yet. He's still working on it, and that's why when you draft young talent, you don't expect them for 4 to 5 seasons.
Absolutely.
Right? So the variance is with Nick Lodolo is that Nick Lodolo had 3 years of 2 or 3 years of collegiate baseball experience at TCU. So you're playing in the Big 12 against some of the best college baseball programs in the country. He played the College World Series, so he saw the best of the best in college baseball, and essentially. He has an out pitch. He's left-handed. He throws a 2-seam and a 4-seam fastball, and he throws a slurve, slide curve, whatever you want to call it. So that's where he's more ready than Hunter Green is. They're both in Double-A, but I think Nick Lodolo comes first. And I think if the Reds are bad enough down the stretch, Nick Lodolo comes up in September. Quote me on that
now. Pop said throw him in the fire. Koufax and Nolan Ryan were wild in the beginning.
Again, Koufax pitched in the 50s, 60s.
I think it's a completely different game now than back then. I think I don't know if it's really fair to say it, but I don't think hitters in the MLB at that time were all as strong and trained as they are now. And you could get away with that more because that was just baseball at the time.
Yeah. Well, not every pitcher threw 95 miles an hour now, like
right.
they do now.
Yeah. I mean, those guys throwing 95, 100 back then, that was nobody could touch that. There wasn't a hitter in baseball that could consistently hit that, and that's why Nolan Ryan and Koufax had the careers that they had.
Right. So another pitcher that the Reds threw into the fire is Robert Stevenson.
Crashed. Burned.
He has not only performed he performed very poorly for the Reds. He is also on the Rockies now in the worst hitter ballpark. And he pitched great this year up until he faced the Reds when they went to Colorado. And I think he gave up like 6 runs and got recorded an out. Not a full inning, like an out. and had like 2 or 3 walks. So while in baseball in the older generation, you could throw pitchers into the fire and let them figure it out. And Charlie, you're 110% right. Nolan Ryan not only has the most strikeouts, but he has the most walks in the history of baseball.
You can't compare Nick Lodolo and Hunter Green to Nolan Ryan.
Or Koufax.
That's just a slap in the face.
Yeah, Koufax is still, again, this is my personal opinion. This is not science. This isn't a proven fact. If I could take Sandy Koufax and plug him into baseball in 2021, I still think that he's one of the most effective pitchers in baseball. But Sandy Koufax was also extremely intelligent, and that's why I think that. He saw baseball at a completely different level than everybody else, and
right.
He threw 5 pitches at a time where most pitchers threw 3, and one of those pitches was not a changeup. Yeah,
Pops, I love you to death, but golf and baseball are 2 completely different sports. But yeah, Phil Mickelson, great tournament. Great tournament. Happy to see old lefty catch a dub. He hadn't won in a while, so yeah. I mean, I think I can agree. Some of the old ways still work. As far as throwing somebody into the fire in today's game, it really depends. I think Todd hit on it, like the mental maturity, and if Hunter Green or Lodolo go out there and get rocked, how are they going to handle that mentally? And are they going to be able to bounce back from that when they're thrown in and they're not prepared? I'm not saying we need to coddle these guys, but I think if we want to get the most out of them, I think we need to make sure that they're ready to go.
Yeah, there's more tools in place now to prepare those guys.
Yeah,
whereas back in the day, like the expectation, a 15-year-old couldn't pitch a professional baseball like Joe Nuxall did, right? There's reasons behind that, and some of it comes with the breed of athlete that we have now, my personal opinion is that it all comes from the mental maturity that these guys have. And
yeah, absolutely.
Most of these guys are the best athletes of their town, some of their state, and then you get to the professional level, and
they're just another guy.
You are one other guy. And Charlie, you're right. Phil Mickelson's 50 years old. He won a major. That's fantastic. Wade Boggs hit his 3,000th hit when he was 41. Everybody has their moment.
Julio
right?
Franco got a hit at 47.
Yeah,
I mean,
everybody had. Ricky Anderson played until he was. I think he's 100 and he still plays baseball. But like, there's certainly moments in the sun for everybody.
Sure.
But that does not mean that they are professionally equipped to be successful. Phil Mickelson is, again, golf is completely different.
Absolutely.
Phil Mickelson plays this game not as an athlete, but as a super intelligent golfer. That is far different. There's a lot of different preparation for golf than there is for baseball.
Will came in with a question a little bit earlier. We kind of got on a tangent here. Are the Reds poor / no decisions with midseason moves a reason we have to settle with subpar results in the playoffs?
That's a great question.
It is a really good question. I think every year, it's the same story for the Reds, right? They get hot right before the All-Star break. They go into the All-Star break, and they crash and burn. And then right as the season comes to an end, they're getting hot again. And sometimes we make the playoffs, sometimes we don't. Most of the time, it is the latter. And as a fan personally, we're always begging for the Reds to make moves and try to get some upper tier talent in that's going to help us win. And most of the time, it's pitching. Last year in the short season, we had the pitching, and it was a perfect example, and it was karma for the Reds that they brought in a great pitcher. He throws a complete gem and has 0 run support.
And also gets beat by somebody who pitched in 2 games during the regular season. That was
it was that game crushed my soul as a fan, and I think it did for a lot of us. But the last time prior to that the Reds were in the playoffs, 2010?
Is that when they played the Giants?
Yeah.
Yeah,
they got
Latos imploded.
Latos imploded, and then Posey hit that grand slam. And I remember where I was sitting. I was sitting in my dad's basement. I skipped class that day to watch the game, and I should have just went to class. Yeah. It would have been a lot less heartbreak.
That was devastating.
But I don't. As far as their lack of making midseason moves, that's just been the Reds in general. I think it does have a pretty big impact on what they've been able to do from a playoff perspective.
Sure. Yeah, I think that a lot of times the Reds make moves at the All-Star break to free up cap space most of the time, right? When they traded Chapman, you get when this is an older one, but in the 90s, the Reds had, at one point in time, they had Dante Bichette, they had Greg Vaughn, they had all these big names that never made it through a full season with the Reds. You sign those guys, or you figure out a way to get them to kind of gain leverage to build in the long term. The Reds try very, very hard to build in the long term of baseball, and they're terrible at it. It sucks as a Reds fan. I love the Reds. I've loved them my whole life, but it sucks as a Reds fan to watch them either miss opportunities on young guys or trade for young guys and either never give them their shot and they trade them away, or they bring them up too soon and ruin their mentality, and it affects them for forever.
Yeah, so Pops made a comment about players being coddled today, or at least my use of the word of coddling players, and they brought up Lou Piniella, and imagine Lou Piniella today in baseball.
He would never.
And what that would look like.
It would never. It would never work. Happen.
It would never work.
He would be. Rob Manfred would ban him from professional baseball.
Yeah, So, I'm not saying tough love's completely gone. I would probably beg to say that it is. I think that's the one thing, at least me personally growing up, that I always appreciated, was, somebody writing me because they care. Mm-hmm. And, they're going to tell me how it is, and they're going to tell me what I don't want to hear, and it's going to make me a better player, person, professional, all around. And, you can't do that anymore. You have to be a player's coach. As much as you're going to hate me saying this, Dad, Dusty Baker is the best player's coach in baseball.
Right now he is, for sure. Other than Gabe Kapler. Look what he's doing with the Giants. But, yeah, Dusty Baker has always done exceptionally well at, being right for the team. It sucks what he did to Mark Pryor. Mark Pryor's kind of a weird example.
Even Kerry Wood.
Yeah, but Dusty Baker learned from that, and he did a much better job of taking care of his players than he ever did.
Yeah.
Than he did at Chicago. Once he moved on, he did a much better job of making sure that the talent was utilized properly and that they were playing through him and not for him. That's a very different sport or a very different game when you're playing for somebody versus playing through them.
Yeah, absolutely. Like even Tony La Russa, we kind of got into the Yerman Mercedes thing a little bit earlier, and just his thought process and how he treated Yerman Mercedes after the fact. And Yerman Mercedes stood his ground and said, "I'm going to basically do whatever the hell I want."
Yeah.
And La Russa didn't like that. And back in the old school days, it was, you're going to listen to me, and this is the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
And that's not the way it is anymore.
No.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it's not, even across all sports, you've got great player coaches, like Steve Kerr, and the days of the guys like Greg Pop, who is a great players coach, but he is also gonna, be hard on you. Those guys are dying out, and it's kind of sad to see. Wow, I'm surprised that you actually gave him a compliment, or at least it's a fact. It's a fact that represents Dusty Baker in a positive manner. Dusty does have a lot of World Series wins, and Dusty does a great job of getting the best out of his players. And I think, the last time the Reds were effective in the playoffs, Joey Votto had an MVP season. Dusty Baker was the coach. Dusty Baker does a great job at getting the best out of his people. And, that's one thing, in today's age that a lot of people, I think, are trying to replicate. People are coaches, they're working harder to understand what players are going through and doing the best that they can to put them in the best situations possible. And, a guy like Lou Piniella, that's a guy you want to play for, though. Lou Piniella, especially back, when the Reds won their World Series, he was at the helm, and he got the best out of every single guy that season. He had a tough crowd to manage, so he kind of had to be a badass, right? You had the Nasty Boys. I think especially those guys were all hotheads. A lot of that team, just absolutely out of control. And you had to have that figure that was going to hold it down and be tough on those guys. So, but yeah, I think most players today are coddled. And it'd be nice to see a coach come in with a little bit of tough love. But does anybody in the chat have any questions for us? We've been going here for a little over an hour, hour and 12 minutes first stream. We were kind of worried about, are we gonna have enough to talk about with only a few topics? But it seems like we've had quite a bit to cover. Does anybody in here have any questions they'd like us to address this evening, outside of the ones you've already had us address? Will, how about the bunt? Are guys too strong and slow to risk it, or is it a lost art? Josh, the Reds should bring back Francisco Cordero. Ice water, baby. No, that's funny. But no, I think the bunt is 100% a lost art.
For sure.
Especially in the era of the shift, which that we could do a whole episode on the shift.
Yeah. Thank Joe Baden for that too.
Right. I think, if you're a left-handed hitter and they have everybody on the right side, and you can't lay a bunt down the left side and go, like, every time they shift you should do that 100%. I don't care what the situation is, at least be personally, because you have to teach them to not play that shift. If you could effectively do that, you would no longer get a shift and your batting average would go up 20 points. But
yeah, so the shift is 100% the reason why bunts don't work. Like, people don't bunt anymore. Yeah. I think the big thing that has changed as you kind of look at the way players prepare for the game is that there's not really a lot of situations anymore where hitters have to bunt, because pretty much everybody in your lineup can hit for power. So while I think that the lost art of bunting certainly resonates in baseball now. I just think that you're right, Will. I think guys are just too big and too strong, and you don't have to really think about, or you don't have to concern yourself with, hey, there's a runner on first and I'm down by 1. I got to drag bunt this guy to second to get him in scoring position, because once Jose Abreu, if he gets on first, then you got Yermin Mercedes, and then you got Yasmani Grandal,
right?
And now you got Tim Anderson, right? So like there's just so many guys that can hit for power now that it's the way of baseball. You either hit for power or you bat 8th. Right. and you're a great shortstop. That's really it. Yeah. That's a great question.
Yeah, it's kind of sad to see that the bunt's disappearing, because it's such an effective tool.
Kenny Lofton made a whole career of being one of the just a great bunter, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially situationally.
Yeah,
it can be devastating, a ball that rolls 10 feet. Especially with the speed that he had. I mean, yeah, just getting on base in general. I think that's a lost art in baseball.
Man, imagine the Indians in the 90s. You have Vizquel batting 9th. Lofton comes up after him, and then you have like one of the Alomars, and then Albert Bell and Jim Tomei, David Justice. How did they not win 162 games in a season? Like, it had to just be pitching.
Yeah, and then the rotation, they got
Charles
late 90s.
Nagy. Yeah, Charles Nagy. The only guy that you could use in MLB baseball in 1997, by the way, for the Indians. Because you wanted to use all their hitters, but you had to pitch with somebody, and Nagy's like a career 4+ ERA guy.
Good question came in from Nick. Who was the next player to hit the 500 club after Miggy? I don't think it's going to take as long as Trout, but I would probably put my money on him.
Man, yeah. Trout first, for sure. There's not really guys consistently hitting 40+ home runs. They have kind of these like big power surge seasons, and then they go away.
They hit 15.
Yeah. Actually, that's a great question, because Nick and I have actually talked about this before, and I have an opinion of somebody that will, and that's Pete Alonso on the Mets.
Really?
I think Pete Alonso is a guy that will be...
Do you think he's going to have longevity?
I do, yes. He is one of the only... He is one of the only old school baseball players in our generation of athlete. He is not overconditioned. He knows his role on the Mets. He is up there to swing as hard as he possibly can.
Every time.
And he's not out there to be a great glove at first. I think where there's a will, there's a way for him to hit 500 home runs. Maybe Aaron Judge, if he can put an eight consecutive seasons together of being healthy, he's a guy that could certainly do it. I'll be honest, man, I don't know if Trout gets to 500. I think that if he does, he's got to play. I mean, he's hurt kind of a lot.
Yeah, I think the issue. I mean, especially. We talked about it earlier. I think the issue with anybody really getting to these career numbers that we all saw when we were growing up, with Griffey and Sosa and Bonds and McGuire, like, are they going to be healthy enough? Because they did not train like the athletes today train, and are they going to be able to come out? Like athletes today, are they going to be able to come out and play 150 games a season? I think that's going to be the biggest issue.
Your dad said a key now. The Punisher,
Aristides,
and his 55 at bats a season that he gets.
He would have to hit a home run 80% of the time if that's
what the month that he hit like 9 home runs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he's hit 9 home runs since. I mean, he's not on the Reds right now, but
let's look it up.
Yeah, I think that Pete Alonso's the guy. That's kind of who I have my money on to be a 500 home run guy. After that, it's somebody that's not playing professional baseball right now. I don't know if there's anybody else that that plays right now that can do it.
All right, let's look up his Aristides Aquino's stats. In 2021, he has 13 ABs.
Yeah, he started with the Reds, but I think he's in Louisville now.
3 hits, 2 home runs. Those are his stats this season.
Against left-handed pitching, more than likely.
Career, he is at 23, 4 years deep in the league.
That's more than I thought.
And he was born in 94. So that makes him 27?
Yeah, math's hard, but you're right.
Yeah, it's 27. Depending on when his birthday is, he can still be 26. But yeah, I don't think Aquino gets the playing time. I don't think he's good enough.
Oh, your dad meant Acuna from the Braves.
Oh, Acuna.
Okay.
Acuna.
You just combined so many names.
I know, I did.
I'm
sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, he's throwing a lot of names out there.
Charlie, that is
It's a bold prediction.
But he's not super far off. I think that Acuna is a guy that, arguably, other than Trout, is the best player in baseball. Maybe Mookie Betts. But Acuna is one of the only 5-tool players that still plays in today's game. He is not somebody that's out there for just a stick. He's not somebody out there just for his glove. That dude can do everything.
Well, if you guys want to hear a stat, this season's not over, and through the 4 years in his career, he is at 96 home runs.
Acuna? Mm-hmm. How many seasons then?
3.5.
Yeah.
3.25.
So you're talking about...
So, yeah. I mean, it's very...
So he's got to play 17 seasons to get to 500, basically.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody plays that long anymore, man. Unless you're, I don't know, a middle reliever and you just pitch 55
Well, he spent a lot of last year hurt, too.
Yeah, he was hurt most of the season.
So, I mean, that number would be way higher if he hadn't spent the entire back half of the season out.
You can also argue, too, I mean, you're throwing into all these, like, current generation players. You're throwing in a 60-game season. That really affects long-term numbers. So... Well, a great question. We either haven't seen, like, it's either Trout, Alonso, or we haven't seen those yet. That's my opinion.
Dad said he loves the game 5 tool. Todd is right. Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you, Charlie.
Yeah,
I'm glad we agree on something.
Yeah. Yeah, that kid down in Atlanta, he's a special talent.
He's special, and he's young, too.
Obviously a show topic from Will, but Pete Rose, Hall of Fame before he's dead. After
100% he has to be dead.
There is no way he makes it into the Hall while he's still breathing, and it's really sad.
So I think when we have the Pete, we'll certainly have a Pete Rose episode.
Sure.
I think I share with the world the White Castle story.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great story.
It'd be great.
It's an absolutely great story.
Yeah.
He met Pete Rose is pretty cool.
Yeah. But yeah, well, while Pete Rose is a part of the old generation of baseball, we saw this year that they were okay with not electing anybody into the Hall of Fame. And right. Pete Rose is still alive.
Yes.
And he has the most hits in professional baseball. Barry Bonds has the most home runs in professional baseball.
They elected not a single soul to the Hall this year.
So, yes, he has to be dead. Barry Bonds has to be dead. A-Rod has to be dead.
I don't even know if they get in.
Yeah,
even after they're dead.
I mean, you're kind of doing almost an in memoriam to them at the Hall of Fame. I mean, when Nick and I went to Cooperstown, there's like almost no stuff of Barry Bonds. The dude has 750 something home runs, or was it 760?
760.
Yeah, 762.
762. Yeah.
And there's like not a drip of him in there, but Carlton Fisk, who is in the Hall of Fame because of a home run. There's a whole section dedicated to him just waving the ball fair, right? So it kind of sucks. It sucks as a Reds fan. It sucks as a baseball fan.
It sucks as a baseball fan. I mean,
steroids affected the game.
Sure,
I get it. But baseball was a lot of fun to watch in the 90s and the early 2000s. If you don't like baseball, you liked watching baseball then because you got to see guys that looked like Mark McGwire hit 400-plus foot home runs consistently, 72 times in a season.
here's the thing. After the lockout in '95, nobody wanted to watch baseball.
Correct.
This is where, the front offices of the MLB and all the sports writers are kind of hypocrites. They begged for baseball to become great again, and it became great again because of the long ball, because of steroids. It brought people to the stadium. It brought excitement and energy and fun back to the game that they all loved. And after they brought all this excitement back, because of the steroids, everybody is now shunned. And it gave them another topic to write about, but now they're on their high horse because they cheated.
You could argue that the Mitchell Report is the worst thing that's ever happened to baseball.
Yeah, absolutely.
Worse than the dead ball era, worse than the lockout. I mean, it affected the people that we grew up
generation
hitting, like when we watched baseball, those guys were hitting their prime, and we got to see that stuff as young kids and act like them, with your friends or whatever.
Absolutely.
And in our lifetime, when we're old and gray and they're dead.
If you were in the backyard doing a Jeff Bagwell impression, a Ken Griffey Jr. impression,
yeah.
Sammy Sosa's little skip, like if you weren't doing that, like,
absolutely, man, it sucks. Like, I wish that they're gonna call it the asterisk era for forever, and it tarnished baseball for really the only purpose being that guys had an advantage to be able to hit home runs. But you had more people in the stands than you've had in a very, very long time at games. So
that home run race they had back in '98 between Sosa, McGuire, and Griffey, that was one of the most lit things you've ever watched.
you had a whole documentary about it.
Yeah.
Of course you did. It's great. I've watched it like 3 times, and each time I'm like, man, I wish I would remember more, because we were, 7 when that happened. But.
Right. Absolutely. Will says there's an obvious correlation between baseball moving to fewer complete games and very few hitters with hopes of hitting with the types of numbers that they get. Hold on. I need to read this question. Is there an obvious correlation between baseball moving to fewer complete games and very few hitters with hopes of hitting with the types of numbers that get them in the Hall of Fame?
So basically, I think he's asking, with pitchers not throwing 300-plus innings, or hitters not getting 600 plate appearances, does that affect the future of the Hall of Fame? So my opinion on that is that the Hall of Fame will change when the current voters for the Hall of Fame,
which are the sports writers, when they all die.
Right. It has to be when they die. And then baseball changes how people get elected into the Hall of Fame.
Because the sports writers control everything, and as soon as we see somebody that would have never gotten in get in, that's when you'll know that the game has changed.
Yeah. If Alex Rodriguez makes it into the Hall of Fame, open the doors. Everybody gets in.
Everybody's coming in.
Yeah. I mean, that is other than Bonds, who, again, some of his issues also have to do with that he will not and A-Rod too, they will not let Major League Baseball use their player rights. They will not sell their player rights to Major League Baseball. So that really impacts the future generation appreciating them more, because you can't buy a retro A-Rod jersey from the Rangers or the Mariners. You can't buy a Pittsburgh Pirates Barry Bonds jersey. You can buy a Bobby Bonilla jersey, but you can't buy a Barry Bonds jersey from the Pirates. And that's when Barry Bonds kind of made his name for himself. I mean, in the late 80s, early 90s, Barry Bonds was the best athlete in baseball. That dude could catch any fly ball, and he was hitting 40-plus home runs.
He was good before he started juicing.
Yeah, for sure. And all he did was shorten his swing. So, there has to be, just like in professional baseball or Major League Baseball, there has to be changes to the front office of the Hall of Fame, the baseball writers, sports writers of America, to see change in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I don't think it's far-fetched that we see more years where guys don't get elected into the Hall of Fame.
I mean, that's what we can do an entire episode on that.
We will. I think that's a good thing where we can kind of break down who's coming in the next few years and who has an actual fighting chance of making it.
Right. Yeah, we can do all that. Steroids, Hall of Fame won't touch them.
No, not right now.
Not right now. Not with.
Even if there's a fire.
Even if there's no. They. I don't think Major League Baseball is at that point yet. I don't think, because in the eyes of the baseball purists, Barry Bonds and Rodriguez and McGuire, the Jose Canseco's of the world. Not that he would ever get in, but
he's.
Yeah, it's
yuck.
It's not anything that's going to happen. Pop says, too bad for Rose and Bonds. Burley Grimes threw illegal spitballs. Bud Selig used Sosa, Bonds, and McGuire to bring baseball back. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Doc Ellis threw a no-hitter on LSD, and the Hall of Fame has that baseball. He was actively on drugs. Not a big deal. But you talk about a guy using steroids, like, that is the be-all, end-all. And Charlie, you're 100% right. Bud Selig exploited that home run race, knew that those guys were taking steroids.
Said nothing.
Knew it was going on. I mean, Jason Giambi went from a beanpole to built like King Leonidas. Like, that doesn't, and he did it in like 3 years. That just doesn't happen. You're not able to, your body's not able to do that. Yeah, Bud Selig's, he's kind of a jerk. He was not great. He was great for baseball during like 9/11.
Yeah.
I mean, what happened in New York post 9/11? Like, that is one of the most beautiful things in sports history, and he was able to kind of orchestrate that right.
Yeah, absolutely.
With George Bush throwing out the first pitch and stuff, but Bud Selig, in my opinion, goes down as the commissioner.
Good question.
That used every juiced athlete in baseball to put asses in the seats, and then just took the biggest bus that you could take and just ran these dudes over.
If you want, so Pops mentioned Brett Boone.
Oh God!
If you had any questions on whether or not he was taking steroids, just take a look at Aaron.
Just Charlie, do yourself a favor and Google images of Brett Boone.
Dude,
so not only is he juiced, that dude has had some crazy plastic surgery done to his face.
Has he really?
Like, almost as bad as Sammy Sosa.
Oh, sweet Jesus.
He doesn't even look like the same person anymore. And he used to dye his hair blonde, which I always thought was weird. I mean, whatever. Each their own. But, yeah, when Boone got traded to the Mariners, he was like, that was pre-Dan Uggla. Like, he was Dan Uggla before Dan Uggla existed.
Right.
Brett Boone came in and at 5'7" had forearms bigger than my thighs. Like, it was just nuts.
Will says, if we make the rules, are we making steroids legal?
Oh, that's a
freaking awesome question.
Well, let's pause it for that. Right? Let's not talk about that. Let's have an episode about it.
I'm gonna write it down though.
That's a great question.
That's an excellent question. We'll get into that.
Yeah. So Bobby and I have actually talked about this previously, and we may have been a little intoxicated, but I think we talked about it.
No, we most definitely were.
I think we talked about it for like 2.5 hours. I mean, it was like, imagine Glengarry Glen Ross, and we're just no cutscene, just screaming at each other back and forth about steroids, because we tried to devil's advocate each other, but we couldn't really do it because we were both so drunk. But that is a fantastic question that maybe in the near future we can do an episode on. I want to get some data together before I give you my firm opinion on it, though.
All right, Earl, thanks for stopping by. Cardinals suck. Just want to throw that out there.
Earl still sucks.
All right. We've been going for a little over an hour and a half now. I think we're at a point where we're gonna wrap up the show. We've had some awesome discussion today. I really appreciate all the interaction in chat. You guys have asked some freaking awesome questions.
Yeah. So, Will, you asked a question about top 5. Bobby and I will answer it to start the next podcast.
Yes.
I think that is a good topic, because I think I think we just don't tell each other our top 5, and then we share it,
and then we come out with
to
it
the podcast.
All right,
and
I like that. I love that.
I think that you will be very surprised who's in my top 5. Because believe it or not, most of those guys, I was not alive when they even played professional baseball. So I think it would be an interesting conversation.
I already know, like, probably 3 of them on your list. All right, perfect. To open next. All right, does anybody have any other questions that they would like us to cover in the next episode? In the meantime, I definitely want to thank everybody for coming out. This is the first time that we've done this. I know both Todd and I were a little nervous. I know I've got my stream that I do daily and everything, but this is a completely different format. Open discussion. We always have those worries of, are we going to, not be able to continue to fill the air. So the questions you guys asked and, being interactive in chat was really helpful. Definitely helped us get through that. So we definitely thank everybody for coming out. Mm-hmm. We had 7 reactions, 10 shares. Appreciate everybody. We're going to do our next episode Thursday, same time, 8 o'clock. We will tackle this question, and we will post about what topics we are going to be touching on tomorrow. And we will come back with our top 5 to open up the next podcast as well. So, if you guys do ever have any topics that you want us to talk about, please shoot us a direct message. A lot of you know us personally. Shoot us a text. Give us a call. We'll be more than happy to tackle it. It's always great for to have the community come in and tell us what you guys want us to talk about, so we can all have an open discussion in the format, kind of like we did today. It was like picture perfect.
Yeah, this is great. I think
of what we envisioned.
Yeah,
I don't think it could have went any better.
I think other than like watching Declan grow, this is my favorite thing to do is just to bullshit about baseball. Like, I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen, like, we feed off of each other. Yep. And I get real worked up real easily. Yes, so
absolutely. Dad, appreciate the love, guys.
Yes. Thank you guys both for giving us some topics to talk about and giving us some ideas to talk about for future podcasts. I think that the big thing for us was why we kind of delayed on this for so long is
wanted to make sure we had enough content.
Yeah. What do we talk about? Yeah. What do we talk about and how do we talk about it? And does it make sense to have any sort of format or to kind of have this open discussion? And I think, we got a good idea of what we're going to be doing.
The open discussion format is definitely going to stay a trend here because I think it worked really well. Yeah. It just basically allowed us, like, we were all sitting in the same room, we're just shooting the shit about baseball, and that's kind of what we wanted this to be.
Yep, so, absolutely.
We appreciate everybody coming out. We'll see you guys Thursday, 8 p.m. Be there, and we'll catch you then, guys. Appreciate it.
Hasta luego.